I wanted to show you one of my research techniques. I want to do each week on the membership video along with the HPS setups. I want to go over maybe some education, or at least a technique I use to help my trading. One of the things is, of course, research, finding these setups. So today I'm just going to go through a fast little scan that I do. I've talked about this on the air, so you might already know about it. But just to kind of remind you, and then I'll focus on a pattern, and we'll break that. We'll just kind of look at that pattern for a second, and you'll understand what I mean in a second. So first of all, we're going to go to Finviz. Finviz is what we're going to be using. Finviz, F-I-N-V-I-Z. If you take a look here, that's the website, and it's the one I use with our market screening map. Remember this map we see during the day? I use this a lot just to kind of get a view of the market, how it's looking. This is an S&P 500 map and broken down to each sectors, and you could pretty much see what's been green, what's very strong. You double click on it, a chart will come up. Right, a chart will come up. There it is. And then, it's a great little site. Great little site. Has a lot of information. It has the insiders. It has all this, the ratings, upgrades and downgrades. I'll go through that too. First of all, all your fundamentals, all your upgrades and downgrades, all the news, filings, insider trading. Actually looking back here, April 30th is the last time the director bought some 27.26. 27.26. It's 28.24. So at least that's where we're starting off. I just want to show you that Finviz. But we're going to go to Finviz. We're going to go right up here. It's the screener. And you just click on the screener. And then you're going to have this nice little field, filled blanks and stuff. You could make a form, and these are the stocks. And go all the way over to the, kind of like right in the center right here. Up on top, there's a couple tabs. Go to Technical tab. Click on that. Everything will look the same, except these will change in here. And you're going to go over here, and I typically look at a pattern. I want to show you a pattern scan, because when you're looking at certain things, and we know certain things work, we know the wedge patterns. I like to sometimes look for wedge patterns instead of going through each stock visually, page by page. That's how I find a lot of them. Just say, all right, someone shows it to me, I want to look at it. Hey, that's a nice pattern here. You could pretty much use this little tool. So you push in a downward wedge. I prefer to use strong. It has two settings. Put down strong. And then this is an area where you just want to clean up here. You want to click on market cap, which will put it in highest market cap order. You don't want to deal with stocks that are $7 million companies. You don't have no idea what they're doing. There's no volume. You want to start usually with the highest market cap stocks. Those are usually the most well-known stocks. And you want to see these patterns in great companies. And as you can see now, we have a nice order of stocks that are supposed to be showing up in a downward wedge pattern. And now, to make it even easier, I want to go to charts here, and I'm going to click on charts, and it's just going to give me that view of all the charts in view. It actually goes over for 3 charts, but my window's not that big that I could show you all of them. But 3 across it gives you. It's really, you can just scroll down and see these charts and see how. And actually, CVS is a good setup for this week. Talked about that on the watch list. I think I'm going to add CBS. Oh, excuse me, CVS. I talked about CBS too. CVS, I got to actually add that chart. I'm going to add that chart. It is a good chart. Celgene, Qualcomm, actually a very nice wedge pattern. I can see a little bit better here on Qualcomm, the one all the way over here on the right. It's a pretty nice little wedge pattern. And it go, you just scroll down. Some of them are not that great. These are just computer plotted lines. So some of them will be off a little. You'll see, but basically it has a formula, cuts through most of the pivots, and tries to set it up like that. And that's good. You're getting a good view. Like Target is actually down to an area where you want to be buying it. Each time it gets to this pulls away from the 200 to 20 to 50. And at that point, it bounces back. So each time it goes, this is a good trend to follow. And now down here, you expect that move back up. And as these patterns play out, we know that, wedge pattern, if it's a good, healthy wedge pattern, And when how do you qualify that? Well, I prefer it to be in a good, healthy stock. So those patterns that play out are typical of, technical moves that are continuation patterns. The wedge pattern could be a bigger continuation pattern on a bigger, a nice pullback, and that's what they are. So we tend to look for those wedge patterns in a pullback, not like a bottoming pattern that we're starting to probably see now, but more of a pullback and then a follow through. So, and again, you can from that point on, I'm just writing them down on the list. I was CVS, that one looks good. Target, that one looks good. Everything else looks good, and I take what I get from this. I'll do other scans and also, but just to take that as an example, and then I move on to another scan. But there's so many different scans here. Channels, head and shoulders, etc. The channels and the wedges are the best by far. Then you have the candlestick scans over here, long lower shadow, which is great. And then you could combine them. So you might say, I want a wedge pattern with this candle. I want this channel with this candle. And let's see what happens. Let's go to a downward channel here. A channel down strong, and then I want to go to a long lower shadow. It only gave me 3 stocks back here. And again, that's the thing, long shadow. Maybe it's picking up this back here. I don't know how the alert's working on this, but anyway, I'm not going to get sidetracked on that. So we found our wedge patterns. Let's talk about the wedge pattern a little here, because a couple of these. Now I brought you up a little section of my research book I use. I post all my charts and stuff, and I do a lot of notes, so I like to share that with you. But this is your typical, let's take a look here, if I can move this over here. This is our typical look at a wedge pattern, falling wedge pattern. It has that, normally we look for channels, but the channels, we have a pivot area, and this we had a gap down, and on pivot area, we maybe extend this line up here and look for that touch up here, but as it turned back down here, you're starting to see now a kind of compression of this line. This lower line, this lower line here, the top channel line, is the strong line. That's our trade line, and it's usually be the one that you're going to be trading off on the downward wedge pattern. The top line here, you could see it's a lower low. You don't know if you're going to pull back, bounce. You're going to make a full rotation up there. I'm more concerned with the lower line here and seeing how when we get an HPS set up into that time frame. I want to talk about the time frame now on this pattern. There's a couple more examples. There we go. A couple more examples of falling wedge pattern. And what you'll start to see, I'm not looking at the volume at this point, but what you will start to see over watching wedge patterns is how they look. There's a kind of an angle here, and there's an angle here. It's not a straight down, real tight pattern. There's a way about it, and you haven't done any scientific measurements on what the degrees should be on these angles, but being in it long enough that you can recognize a good wedge. And once you identify that good wedge, you start to look at this time frame. It's 65 to 75% area, and that was done as a measurement or a statistical review of that. And that's what has been shown is 65 to 75% area of this wedge is where you typically get your move. So once you start to apply that with the trend lines where you are in the chart, and maybe even some divergences, and some of the clues that you're looking for, that you want to see either a double bottom or a divergence down here. A double bottom is just as good, and once you start to see this start to hold up and start to move, it's usually a good indication that this holds up. And you'll see a lot of, I'll try to give you some examples of some of those double bottoms. Let me see if I can get, these are all my charts. Here's a good one. Oh, this is real big. You might not see the whole thing. All right. So here's your wedge pattern. You can feel the angle. You're getting down into that zone. In this case, you're holding those recent lows, and boom, you pop out. All right. So if you hit it here and it pushes back, you don't want to always just look to take that trade off the lower trend line. Lots of times that 65-75% area will cause you to get that double bottom. That double bottom, you can see that stochastic setting down here is kind of giving you a hint. Hey, we're not moving lower. We're already oversold So we're starting to see that type of divergence between, you know, when we're starting to make lower lows with the price, but all of a sudden we're oversold. We're not making lower lows. We're actually holding those lows. That's kind of a tell there. Let me go back here, see what else I could find for you. And that was also a double, kind of a double bottom there. Here's some examples that whenever I do trade these, this looks like an old HPS setup. So you recognize the HPS setups. You know, this is what I like to, you know, kind of show you that a wedge pattern, take our entry, our profit zone. Also pay attention to the hourly time frame. We have an hourly divergence back here, down here. So that's just, you know, that's the capper right there. The hourly divergence is the capper right there. We actually had it here too. From here to here, this was, everything was great here. It did pull back here. It didn't really take any go any lower, but it did, you know, work out perfectly. Let's see what else we have. All right, here's another HPS setup. And again, recognizing that double bottom here inside that time frame, looking for that breakout. Also put an alert in during that, at that time. I put 2 alerts in on this just in case we did break down here. We still want to pay attention to this lower trend line. But overall, a good pattern. Love this pattern. One of my #1 patterns. You can find it on the daily, on the 60-minute time frame. You'll find it on the weekly on occasion, but you'll find it a lot on the 1-minute time frame too. Now I'm switching over to the 1-minute chart here, and I want to show you something interesting. During the day, I'm looking at the charts like this, and you know, we're analyzing on a micro scale, you know, very micro scale, which makes things interesting for the show, but yet makes it kind of unrealistic or very fast. You know, when we're trying to make profits out of each one of these little ticks. And we're not trying to do that, but we're trying, you know, what I'm doing a play-by-play for the market. We have to remember to always be looking at the big picture. And when I say we're looking at wedge patterns, there's usually 2 patterns that I'm paying attention to, the channel or the wedge. And both of them could be, you know, in some ways called a channel. You know, you're staying within a kind of defined line. Two lines that are, you know, they do have a straight edge to them. They have a defined level and where they're going to end up going. So you could, you know, understand that you're going to be trading inside those lines, and when you tag those lines, that's where you're trading to make sure your other indicators are lining up. So we look for those, and you can see those on even the micro charts, the 1-minute chart. And I want to zoom out here now, and this is how we ended the day. And I was watching the futures today. I said I want to get involved, and then I was like, you know, I just couldn't. I wasn't seeing anything that I typically want to trade, and I didn't end up taking any futures trade today. And I find my And when you take a look at this chart, I find myself more comfortable these days actually trading the in the money or at the weekly, at close to or in the money options on the SPY. And I find that's just and then even today, and yesterday I was trading the TNA, the small cap bull and bear ETF that tracked the Russell, and that was moving real fast, and it was just really ripping around. And you could actually get options on some of these too. So I find that to be more enjoyable, but that requires our time frame to be a little bit longer, and I think that takes, you know, you have to just say, all right, these little moves are great to watch. Oh my God, this is breaking out of a channel. It might have been a flag, but it's breaking down. These patterns are really bigger patterns that are playing out, and as I zoom out here, as I pull away from planet Earth, you start to see the shape of some of the land features. And here's the big feature: is this big rising wedge pattern, which has been playing out over time, you know, since Wednesday. And we zoom out even further, and you see, well, this is actually the results of a downward channel that we've been trading. And there might be a lot of lines on here, and I apologize for that, but you get to see what I'm looking at. The bigger picture is so important. Understanding the directional trade on a longer term, you know, maybe a 3 to 4 day run, instead of looking minute by minute. Understand where your bigger patterns playing out, and understand that some of these patterns, and here's an example of this kind of rising wedge pattern, understand what these patterns do, but inside the bigger pattern overall. So that's why it's important to watch that wedge pattern. You see the wedge pattern here, and a very tight one and a breakdown versus the large rising one. This is going to be an interesting one too. You know, on occasion you can start with a gap up here, but you know, any type of gap up, I think on Monday, or a nice little run up here, I think that hedge should be in order. But we're going to talk more about that on the next video. All right. But this is where we're leaving off, so we have to remember to going into next week, this could be an interesting trade. I'm not counting out a pop up out of this and then a retracement and a fall back down. You know, lots of times that will happen. Bigger picture, though, you know, this is the beginning of a new uptrend where we're going to move a little bit higher and then pull back and put a higher low and start to build back up. Again, that's all coming up.